Hello, everyone. Delighted I am to be here, to be chairing this session and about a very strategic topic that is how to achieve the transition to sustainable cities. And we'll take as a case study Morocco within the context of Africa. Why this topic is strategic? As you may know, according to the United Nations statistics, that the continent of Africa is moving fast in terms of urbanization. And by 2035, half of Africa, half of the population of Africa would be urban. So you have here a continent that is moving very fast and urbanizing fast, but the key question, do urbanization in Africa create opportunities or maybe just exacerbating the crisis? And so many crises indeed. The crisis of high population densities in urban centers, the crisis of increasing poverty, the crisis of course, energy and lack of energy and optimization of resources, and of course the informal housing that is plaguing all African cities. And this case, or within this context, within this complex context, Morocco is taking the lead on shaping a new generation of cities that are resilient, sustainable, and smart. You may agree with me about these three concepts that may be global, what it means resilience, what it means sustainability, and it means smartness in the case of Africa. But I do assure you, through the case studies that will be showing you today, there is a huge effort actually made in order to boost the resilience. And the resilience for us is not only about catastrophes, but rather is about investing in the human capital, is investing as well in the immune system of local communities and how they would shape their own future. And sustainability for us is just like a way to boost the first part, which is resilience, and to boost the cultural, economic, social, environmental capital of human establishments. I prefer to use human establishments rather than to use the rural or urban, because this dichotomy actually is a major problem also in Africa, because we focus so much on urban centers. So without getting further, so we have here 3 or 4 presentations. The first one is from a national agency for energy efficiency, optimization of resources, and of course what it means sustainability related to resources. And we'll be showing you the national strategy for Morocco and how we would reduce the energy sector from being dependent to more renewable energies, and of course how this is related to the sector of building and urban industry. The second presentation is coming from Al-Omrane. Al-Omrane is a governmental national agency that started long before, because Morocco was facing informal settlements and we were facing informal expansions of cities, and it was actually a major problem. But we don't see anymore informality as a problem. Now there is a shift in terms of policies of Morocco. The informal may have a lot of opportunities and may also have the sense of culture, the sense of belonging, the sense of identity of a place. So how can we explore the informal towards a more sustainable solutions and create quite a plus for the growing cities based on this? And this is why Al-Omrane is a leading national agency in combating slums, but in the same time providing alternatives for people in those informal settlements. And they are moving from the typologies of projects, they are just individual housing projects, to a more comprehensive, integrated, sustainable, human establishments. The second presentation, or the third presentation is CDG, and CDG is actually financial group, is very strong financial group, and here we could see the PPP, that means the public-private partnership. I may add the fourth P, which is for people, PPPP, that means public-private partnership for serving people. And in this case, we have this financial group is developing an amazing case study, Zenata City, which is Société d'aménagement de la ville de l'Eco-Cité de Zenata. I will present the case, of course, on another group, OCP. OCP is the largest enterprise for phosphates. You may have heard of it. And it's actually developed a series of green and smart cities, not in the center of like the big cities like Casablanca, Rabat, Marrakesh. And in Morocco, I would add one thing before I cede the floor to my colleagues. We are so careful on not centralizing the population in Morocco in one center, though Casablanca is becoming wild as a metropole, is reaching around 5 million, on between 4 and 5, but we're trying to create new cities in places where there is no agriculture. We cannot devour the resource agricultural lands for urbanizing like Casablanca, Mohammedia, other ones. So in this case, what kind of territorial balance, thanks to the new constitution 2011 of Morocco, we have this advanced regionalization, and it stands for developing regions and creating their financial autonomy, their knowledge, their, of course, and their potential, their its own infrastructure, and this is what will be seen. So without further ado, I would introduce Saïd Moulin. He is the Director General of AMEE, the National Agency for Energy. Please see Saïd. He will be online, and of course AMEE is very known for its work on energy efficiency, resource optimization, and of course he will relate the national strategy to the urban sector. تفضل سي سعيد.
Thank you very much, friend Hassan Radoine. It's a great pleasure for me, even if I'm still far. I was in Dubai 10 days ago. We had different meetings in the same room. So I would like, first of all, to say hello to all my friends here, Group Al-Omrane, CDG, and the Zenata group. I would like, first of all, to thank you for this invitation, and especially on this topic concerning to how to achieve the transition to sustainable cities. It's a great pleasure for me because, as you know, we are also involved in the COP26 right now, and when we're talking about smart cities and sustainable cities, and we should, especially for the Kingdom of Morocco, mention that this approach is linked to a much more global policy. We have a strategy, national strategy for sustainable development for all sectors. Of course, cities are concerned, the industry is concerned, all the actors, the energy is concerned, the agriculture is concerned. So the approach today is to have an approach linked to cities, but included in a global approach, in global policy, set at the highest level of the state. We have the chance in the Kingdom of Morocco, being a country, not big emitter country. A Moroccan is emitting 7 times less than an American of greenhouse gas. We have this opportunity, and we have the chance to have this vision at the highest level of the state, who started many years ago. And the strategy for sustainable development is now underway with many actions in different sectors. 10 years ago, the King's letter was very clear. Priority to renewable energy and energy efficiency in our energy transition, with objective to reach. Now we're talking about more than 52% of our capacity production for Eco-Cité coming from renewables. We are talking about 20% of energy efficiency in industry, transport, buildings, agriculture, and cities. We are also having dedicated agencies. It's very important, when you have those strategies, to have also dedicated agencies to help to develop new legislation, to support technically and financially, and also to have an approach for capacity building, very important, and at the same time, sensibilization. The transition is not an easy way. Of course, today we have the chance that renewables are becoming cheaper and cheaper. So when you have an investment, even for cities, linked to renewables, for public lighting, even for sustainable mobility, and I will talk about that also, it's something that is much more competitive today. It was very expensive before, now it's not the case anymore. And especially in the context of the Kingdom of Morocco, where we have a coherent policy. We stopped subsidizing fossil fuel. So that's why we have the payback for any investment for solar water heaters, for solar PV, for wind. It's something that the payback is shorter and shorter. That's why we are helping decarbonization today in different sectors, of course in the industry, and we discussed this in Dubai a few days ago, but especially for cities. I'm sure that all the applications, and you cannot imagine how many energies are consumed in a city for public lighting, for the public buildings, for the mobility, for all the sectors are consuming energy. So to have clean energy for all those sectors is important. At the same time, there's a huge approach for sensibilization, how to change some behaviors. When talking about new cities, you should look how some behaviors has to be changed. It's very important to look at how in our country we started to do some projects with small cities. With city of Shawan, for example, we had an approach to sensibilize people how not only they could use mobility in the city, but also how they can use energy in their own house. So sensibilization is very important at the same time. So those points are linked to an approach with legal point. It's very important. It's very important to help also the investors. We developed at the AMEE, at the agency, a war room green economy a few months ago, is to help all investors in this field to do the investment with support from the government in any investment linked to sustainable mobility, to energy efficiency, to circular economy. Cities are having a lot of waste, are producing a lot of waste. So we need to have a policy also on this field at the same time that we have it for energy. So that's what we are working on right now on the agency with different partners. And I'm glad because we had the chance to have an MOU with Al-Omrane. We had the chance to have an MOU with Zenata. I had the chance to work with OCP a few years ago. But I can assure you that the Kingdom is today ready for having this strong proactive policy because we have a strong support at the highest level of the state. I mentioned the King's letter in 2009 for giving priority to renewable energy and energy efficiency, but I can assure you, and I don't know if you heard the King's letter yesterday at the COP26, how it is important, not only for the Kingdom of Morocco, but for the whole continent, Africa continent, our continent. It's to how to have all the projects supported. And what we are asking also for is to have more support, especially for sustainable investment. And we are hoping that we can develop much more financing for that. Last point I would like to mention, we just launched a guide, a financial guide for all the financing available today in the Kingdom for green investment. And you have many support from many banks, but also for development banks, but also from agencies like Maroc PME, where we have Tatwir Vert, a dedicated loan with subsidies for investment in the green economy. So when you have all those points, the right policy at the highest level, the dedicated agencies, the regulation, and also financial support and financial loans for that, you can reach all our objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Simouline. Thank you so much for this inspiring presentation and showing how nationally there is actually strategy for energy efficiency and, of course, optimization of resources. And the agency, as he mentioned, that is not related only to industrial activities or one sector. So all sectors, they are concerned with the energy efficiency, reducing physical soft waste, reducing pollution, and of course creating a sustainable metabolism. So now I would pass the floor, cede the floor to our colleague from Al-Omrane that will present the case of Al-Omrane, Si Shafiq Mustafa. Thank you. Al-Omrane, of course, is well known in Morocco. They've been there for several decades working on the question of social housing, but now really they shifted their mindset and they want you to focus on that shift of mindset towards more sustainable housing, sustainable urban ensembles, and sustainable new cities that you've launched. Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, Mr. Moulin, for the introduction, because it was a good introduction for what we will treat in the presentation for Al-Omrane. I will use French language because I feel more comfortable in French, but don't hesitate if you want to ask or to make the focus on one point in English. I can do it for you. Thank you very much. La présentation qu'on va faire aujourd'hui, en fait, il va permettre de faire.
We're going to focus on today emphasizes the transition to sustainable cities through what we do in Al-Omrane as a state operator, as a public enterprise, and how we are trying to manage lands. Concerning the Moroccan constitution, the state, the public institutions seek to mobilize all available means in order to facilitate access of citizens to the conditions allowing them to enjoy their rights. And the decent habitat is an integral part of this. His Majesty has ordered the creation of Al-Omrane, which is a fusion between many regional institutions. The National Institution for Management and the National Institution for Habitat. Al-Omrane has started implementing the state policy in terms of urban development, and the objectives are quite clear: to contribute to the production of habitats in Morocco, to accelerate all forms of habitats, and this through the restructuring of several unsanitary housing. Dynamizing the partnerships and enhance the position of the group as a citizen-focused enterprise. Based on what was previously said, we are trying to implement the policy of the state in terms of housing, and they focus on the implementation of public projects such as the project of Ville Sans Bidonville, VSB, and today we have 60% of cities that are under this group. We have also the social housing program and the program of treatment of ancient and housings and those that are threatened to be ruined, and the urban development program, as well as the program for the development of southern provinces. So the strategic focus of this institution is to focus further on on this institution. It is managed by the Council for Surveillance, presided by the head of the government, the Minister of National Territory, Urbanism, Habitat, and the policy of city. Also, this involves the Minister of Interior, of Economy and Finance, also the Minister for the Energy Transition and Sustainable Development. All of these are considered to be essential points because this is one of the most urgent causes today and requires the inclusion of several stakeholders. So we've spoken about the surveillance and the several levels, the management level mainly. So the issue of governance is very important. This is why we are working on having a multinational governance. That's why we have a council that works hand in hand with several auditing and committees of other specialties in order to be able to speak further about Al-Omrane. So we have more than 40 years of experience. We have several partners, almost 60 agencies that are close to the citizens and that are present in the middle of the cities. 5 billion dirhams, Moroccan dirhams, $500 million of investment, annual investment, $500 million of turnover, more than 130,000 of units per year, and today we have the cap 2025 between 2001 and 2025. It's a public institution that is present in the whole country. You can see here our presence in red, and we have the urban poles that are more than 50 at the national level. Here we are focusing on the new cities, Shrafat, in order to provide housing for 150,000 people. So here we are talking about a total of population among all cities that exceeds 1 million. And we have a global investment of 117 billion dirhams, Moroccan dirhams. So in order to Al-Omrane, it's also an integrated and progressive vision that allows the development of sustainable territories. This is why we are in need of a shared national vision, which is the first pillar, and operational policy, which is the second pillar, a continuous innovation, which is the third pillar, and a sustainable financing, which is the last pillar. Today, Morocco has a national strategy for sustainable development, And we have also signed the new sustainable development agenda. What we have tried to do is to focus on these dynamics. This is why our activities contribute directly to at least 70 sustainable development goals. First, quality education, and this through the equipping the places of education and the well-being, and this through the operation of territorial development, clean water, and this by providing drinking water to unsanitary neighborhoods, decent travel and economic growth, and this by ensuring that these goals are achieved. Industry, innovation and infrastructure. Al-Omrane today has contributed to the management of 80% of industrial zones. Also cities and sustainable communities. We have 5 new cities and 50 urban poles. Also the measures taken in order to fight climate change and to mitigate the impacts of climate change by installing photovoltaic screens. We are lucky because we have the sustainable development strategy that goes hand in hand with the SDGs, sustainable development goals. This is why Al-Omrane has decided to to take over its societal responsibility. This strategy has become a national one, and we have now the label RSE, and this is a recognition of this national strategy. We have also the prize Hassan II for the protection of environment. In order to have an operational policy, Al-Omrane has used 2 main approaches. First, a thematic approach, and another a systemic approach. In 2012, Al-Omrane has put in place a project of social housing at the national level, and that has integrated energy efficiency. And this has allowed us to conduct further tests and experiments in order to put things in place in 2015. In 2015, we took into consideration the environmental and social aspects on the ground. And this by adopting a green plan that is in line with the international standards related to protecting the environment. In 2018, we have generalized the thermic studies in order to have a better energy efficiency in social housings. And in 2019, we have generalized the architectural accessibility, and this by allowing urban access through housing and construction and development operations. In 2020, we have moved to another phase, which is the experimentation of new material and procedures in construction and development. And all of the projects that we have been working on, all of our approach should allow us to generalize these achievements. So we said that we have a thematic approach, but also a systemic approach. Why? Because Al-Omrane makes sure that it is possible to test and experiment rules that are related to the housings, even during the phase of planning and before the implementation phase. The conduction of primary studies of environmental impact. These studies were not obligatory before, but they are today, and to put in place new Moroccan norms, ISO, related to the planning of sustainable cities. And this will allow the comprehensive management of communities and an efficiency in terms of energy. And today we are trying to adapt to the national, local context in terms of the Eco-Cité, so it can be adopted in the new cities and some other urban poles that are developed by Al-Omrane or other. The third pillar is the continuous innovation. We are convinced that nothing can grow if there is no innovation. This is why Al-Omrane has signed partnerships in order to boost innovation and growth and to achieve this goal. So we have a partnership with the National Center for Scientific and Technical Research by launching Omrane Innov program. The objective is to develop a new process related to development that is energy efficient and an improvement of the thermal conditions. And the second partnership is with the Institute for Research in Solar Energy and New Energy, and the objective of this partnership is to develop a new concept of affordable housing in the most inhabited zones in Morocco. And today we are trying to work with the startups that have creative solutions. The last pillar, which is the sustainable financing, because we cannot achieve anything if we do not have sustainable financing and continuous financing, and if we don't have a clear financial plan. This is why we have been able to call for using the social and green bonds in Morocco in order to achieve these targets and in order to be able to have 1 billion dirhams, Moroccan dirhams, allocated to that. And today we would like to work further on this and to accelerate these dynamics. Thank you very much for your attention.
Respecting time.
Thank you.
You've done a good job. Thank you. So for the ones that have missed the first part, I've seen that you did not get your headphones on the right time. So just the good news about this national agency, Al-Omrane in Morocco, really there is a shift of paradigm in terms of the way we solve the questions of social housing, moving from the quantitative approach to a more qualitative approach. And you know that most developing countries, they've treated the questions of slums and the informality at the start with hush decisions, and that was had a very negative impact on how populations they may trust governmental actions. And in that sense, Al-Omrane moved from that quantitative approach to more qualitative ones. Like for instance, most of their housing projects, they need to have green spaces, they need to have shared spaces, they need to have more human-centered solutions in terms of urban organization or the structure, the questions of neighborhood cells, etc. And now they are shifting to another generation of projects, embracing the sustainability agenda in terms of, that the sector of building is consuming much energy. we may say like 46% of energy consumed by buildings in Morocco. And in that sense, I'm happy to see that there is a move to a more efficient way to construct and, of course, to optimize resources in general. So now we will pass to another presentation, but this time you'll be landing to a more specific case, because Al-Omrane was more like an institutional presentation on the strategy and actions of a larger group. But now you have a case study, showcase, and you may see in a very tangible way how an Eco-Cité. So please, we need to be very careful with terms. Some they may say ecological, some they may say sustainable, some they say resilient, some they may say green, some they say inclusive. So I would ask my dear colleague Mohammed Amin Al-Hajouj, he has a tough task to define and prove why his city is eco and why he's chosen this decision. And he's the top manager of Société d'Aménagement, Zenata, and I'm proud of him for what he's done. And as you see, he really masters what he's talking about. Thank you. Please. Yeah.
So the title of my presentation is Zenata, a leading African eco-city. It's an innovative, sustainable city, not only in Morocco, but in Africa. So our objective is continent-wide. So Morocco has started a new city policy, and Al-Omrane and other institutions have been working on this policy and strategy. We have the OCP, which will be presented by my colleague Hassan, and the CDG, which is an institution, a state institution that manages urban planning and development in several areas, has more 100 years of experience, and this is how we are trying to work at the regional level. So the project of Zenata. Zenata is an eco-city, and I would like to define what's an eco-city. It's a land that is considered to be sustainable at the social level, economic level, and environmental level. So this project was one of the first projects in the African continent, and it encompasses the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and here you can see the percentages of each goal. So it's how far we have come in each of these fields, or in each of these goals in terms of sustainable development. So some of the important figures, it has a strategic location northeast of Casablanca that has 300,000 inhabitants, and we have a maritime front of 7 kilometers, and we are talking here about 1,830 hectares, and as I said before, in Zenata, 300,000 inhabitants. And these are in line with the sustainable development, and we are talking here about 2 billion euros financed by the French Development Agency and the European Development Bank. So this project is very innovative. We have forged what we call today the eco conception. It is basically based on 4 pillars in order to build a sustainable city. My colleague was just talking about green inclusion, Eco-City. The Eco-City is everything together, but in a systemic and integrated way, without ignoring any of the chapters of the city, because the city, it's a whole of things that should be allied together, structured the right way, and very well think sustainably. Here I have mentioned 4 important pillars. First, the management of elements, the fresh air and the water, and we have made the land in a way that allow us to ensure this. I encourage you to visit the website of Zenata. I cannot detail everything. I have a few minutes, but these are titles that show you more about the concept. The second important point is water, gravity flow and mixed canal systems divert rain surface water through natural reservoirs. The second pillar is accessibility and inner mobility. The important point in a city is that for the city to be accessible and to develop collective or public transport, the mobility plan, and the soft mobility. So we have 44 kilometers of bicycle and pedestrian walkways, and this is good also for health. The third pillar of Zenata is to have a city with human scales and to be green and open. So we have 470 hectares, 30% of total land area of parks and greenery conceived to promote biodiversity, and 19 square meters per habitant versus 13 square meters based on the WHO standards. So when we have done the work during the last few years, benchmarking with the new cities, we have realized that 70% of these developed territories are considered to be a failure. Why? For 2 or 3 reasons. The first one is that we have either come up with industrial cities or cities for living only. So we didn't have a multi-active cities. So accessibility was also an issue. So we had a void territory, a void land, and we forgot all about accessibility. So today we are trying to avoid these reasons of failure and to build a new modern concept that is multi-active and accessible in terms of infrastructure. But also experience and benchmarking have showed us that we should try to start with jobs. That's why we have decided to build an economic model based on high value added jobs, international university campus, integrated healthcare center, and retail center. We will see a timeline that explains all of this later. So these are models. The first steps have been taken. Also the healthcare aspect, this is the educational aspect, which is also very important. The Hassan University in Casablanca with the 3 activity poles: health, engineering, and sustainable development. And we have the healthcare aspect supported by Saudi German hospital. They are building a healthcare center with 500 beds, and the works have started last October. And a retail center, the first IKEA in Morocco, will be in Zenata with a very big pole. So we are talking about the huge pieces of land that are dedicated to that. So here we are talking about about 2,000 hectares, so we should think in a sustainable way at all aspects. This is why we started with a master plan of 800 hectares. We have built the best-in-class infrastructure based on national standards with a highway interchange and in the master plan, you can see everything that you can also see that even the healthcare center, the retail center is close to the highway interchange, as well as the international university and the residential development plan, which is quite close to everything. So here we are covering the side of accessibility. So this is the timeline. We will not read everything, but it's just to show you that the project started around 10 years ago, and today we have come far in terms of infrastructure, of the master plan, and we know where we are heading. The biggest headlines of development are being implemented, and we are following up on details, how the world is progressing, how our country is progressing, how our cities are progressing. So the Eco-City of Zenata came to answer a specific need. We know that a country develops thanks to its middle class population, and we have focused on this segment of population because in Casablanca and in Morocco we have more developed social housing. My colleague has spoken about that. And we have also focused on international standards, but our Eco-City today is a mosaic of independent living units, and we have given this population a concept that, as I said, is a mosaic of independent living units offering all the necessary equipment for daily life in terms of education. The first neighborhood has been achieved, which is the agricultural neighborhood, which is 400 meters from the sea. We have several stakeholders that are working on this project. The first inhabitants have arrived in June. In 2023, we will have 1,500 units ready in this project. The question that is important today in terms of these projects that grow gradually but at a big scale, we are talking about 30 years, so it's important to monitor the progress of these projects. This is why we have regrouped ourselves in 2015, 2016. We have cooperated with international experts in order to monitor the project step by step. In terms of the timeline, time and space. So our idea was very simple. How can we duplicate the example of Zenata, which was created in COP22, how we can duplicate this and create the same model in other African cities without having exactly the same Zenata, but taking into consideration the specificities of each country. So there are some main principles that are very important and we should be taking into consideration. For example, flexibility, proximity, diversity, And these 6 sustainable development principles have been grouped together to the pillars of sustainable development, environment, economy, social, territorial, and we have put KPIs that are indicators. We don't have them here on the screen, but that allow us every year to monitor the progress. So thanks to this, we have been able to monitor all the goals and that we have put forth, and we try as much as possible to enhance our performance. So today, we would like this model to be duplicated. And we have worked with the French entity Serway in order to achieve this development. So I still have 3 minutes and I will be concluding. So the execution of the framework supported by a digital strategy. What I would like here to talk about the accelerators for the development of the project. It's a process that we have put forth. It's a smart strategy based on sustainable development, economy, social and environment, and we have put clear objectives that are related to smart as in energy and mobility, in social equity, and in security and resilience. All of this is being implemented based on a specific process, a mode of implementation that embraces our vision. So we started with a few quick wins, but before that we have put forth smart initiatives that are considered to be very important so that we can implement that. The telecom infrastructures, fiber optic everywhere. Also, we have built independent GC infrastructure for smart network that is connected to the smart network. As I said, since 2010, we have launched an open innovation program that focuses on this project, and that is supported by the government in order to provide the necessary financing for this. And we have worked with startups that work in the field of innovation. So they use Zenata as a pilot space for them, and we are working also with IBM. And we have also a few other partnerships that are considered to be of high importance to us. We have also strategic partnerships that allow us to conduct all this. We are also working on a smart command station, and we have established a smart traffic light management system. So all of this cannot happen without our strategic partnerships. I have visited a dozen of pavilions, and all of the pavilions are focused on artificial intelligence. This is the future. So the smart today is no longer a choice. It's a prerequisite in order to guarantee the development of Morocco and other countries in Africa and every other country. Thank you very much.
This excellent presentation. As you may see that I'll be presenting as well. So I need to be also just to give every speaker the time to talk, at the same time to interact with you. So please, next presentation. But before I move to the presentation of OCP, I will explain what OCP stands for. So just to demystify those concepts, as you see, Si Mohammed Amin, they pursued the ecological, or beyond the ecological. I mean, eco as an integrated approach to nurture a new town or a new city. Let us just debate that a city never can be planned. I mean, all now hypothesis is that I am a city planner and of course an architect, but now we all agree that a master plan like what we have in Morocco, plan d'aménagement, or the strategic schemata, they would never cultivate a sense of place or a sense of belonging. So they are there to set an order, but at the end of the day, we need to look at this metabolism, this quite integrated work of different components within a vehicle, which is the city. And this is why we need to be very careful with the cité and civitas. I mean, the cité was always designed to create civilization. Unfortunately, we have this urbanization that went beyond the question of civilization or any culture. Thanks, Si Mohammed Amin, you inspired me, because Zenata, now I am happy for that new town that will be another example of an eco-city based on some KPIs and of course aligned with SDGs. We may debate about SDGs if they can be translated verbatim on the ground. So let me show you another private actor in Morocco, OCP. OCP is the largest company of phosphates, but they are not just exporting phosphates, but they are the largest world producer of fertilizers. And the CEO of OCP has a vision, or has had a vision, that the future of the planet is all about food security. So food security, and the other part where the OCP is investing is also knowledge, higher education, knowledge, research, and innovation. So after 100 years that OCP is on the ground, they developed manufactories, they developed industrial plantations, they worked on a chemical transformation of fertilizers, but this 100 years on the ground, they were developing their own towns. They call them the mining towns. But these mining towns, they were lacking a lot of elements, social, cultural, economic, etc. And this is why OCP has moved to a new generation of, they call them green sustainable cities, regardless of what this term means. So what is the purpose of these cities for OCP? That means, I've mentioned at the start that African cities, they are lacking some substance. That means we are building cities in Africa, but most of these cities, they become dormitory. So are we building cities only for people to dwell without giving them human activities, without giving them workplaces, without creating opportunities? And therefore, the OCP new cities, they are based on a model that is very linked to industrial activities and of course innovation and research, and hence the importance of the knowledge economy, or the economy linked to knowledge and research, technology and innovation. And in this map it shows you that this OCP group is actually all over Morocco, having different urban hubs, and how now at the territorial level, how those cities, they would shift or they would be converted if they are existing, or the ones projected newly. So the ones that are existing, so there is lots of work to upgrade. There is actually an upgrading work for them. And of course, how to relate them to sustainability and how to make them more vibrant, more dynamic, rather than isolated towns that are far from the center. So the first actually new cité, which is Mazagan, not far away from Casablanca, is a model actually that is pursuing exactly what Si Mohammed Amin actually is underlining. So the question of how to link the ecological environmental dimension, but the only specificity with the group OCP, always having a university at the center of any project of a town. Because we do understand, without capitalizing knowledge, without innovation, those towns, they will again be transformed to be just the dormitory towns. So therefore, the industrial dynamics of the group is capitalized within a university, and the university will be the hub to create the town. And this is what happened in Mazagan, which is having education, having research and development centers, commercial and entertainment activities, and health and well-being. And of course, the landscape is just amazing. This is, of course, respecting the natural resources around. That was not actually based on any whatever of raising trees, and of course was in full respect of the natural resources. The green city of Benguerir that is now becoming the center in Morocco. I am not exaggerating. I mean, thanks to Mohammed VI Polytechnic University that was actually inaugurated by His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, this university's vision is to create a center of knowledge power far from the political capital, which is Rabat, or the economic capital, which is Casablanca. Because we do have, and we should confess, we do have this problem of centralization of economy in Morocco. So you may have part of the coastal area of Rabat and Casablanca having the whole wealth of the country, almost like 70%, which is not fair. Thanks to the advanced regionalization and the new constitution of 2011, this kind of a new kind of adventures. You're going to a little town, very resilient territory, and you are setting a city that would be situated globally, internationally. And thanks to the University of Mohammed VI Polytechnic and its research labs, etc., industrial clusters, now Benguerir is being situated at the territorial national level and of course at the global level thanks to the knowledge production at the level of the city. So hence we have here another view of how to cultivate a sense of a sustainable, resilient city by working with communities far away from the center and creating a center of excellence in terms of education, innovation, and research. So let me just show you some examples, and of course, because when we're talking, we don't know what we're talking about, but actually some pictures will just visualize for you the importance of a university in making a city happen. And we don't have the only example here that is this new town. We have the Medina of Fez that has almost 11 centuries, and the Medina of Fez could not be sustainable without its University Al-Qarawiyyin. And you've heard about this University of Qarawiyyin, was one of the first universities before even Valencia. And it has, of course, a hospital, it has a complex that we're talking about 10, 11 centuries. So why I'm saying all that? That Morocco is not a new country where we are just experimenting towns. It's a country that has a long history in terms of building cities, building human establishments, building urban hubs, etc. So now this university, within 3-4 years, it's reached almost 3,600 students. And it's very oriented research and education, and of course, mainly research. And within the research realm, we've included the question of living labs. How can a smart or green city or sustainable city can be a living lab for a university? And we cannot venture with just those 2D plans on the top level, top-down plans, because worldwide, it's not just me saying it, The master plans killed communities. The master plans, they've never cultivated a sense of sustainability. And this is why living labs, testing and learning, of course, and to go into those communities and make the research linked to the university, how this new city or new town would be. And this is why in terms of sustainability, of course, guidelines, the questions of how to link different sectors in the city, the health, education, and other sectors. So this is all about, of course, experimentation. I would never venture say, hey, we have here a city that is holistic, a city that will be implemented and within 3 years will deserve to have the name of the name of a city. So this is why actually experimenting on the future of human establishments and what kind of qualitative elements we need to include: justice, inclusiveness, sustainability, social equity, financial opportunities, workplaces. It's a very delicate subject to deal with. However, through this experimentation, nothing is absolute like a map or a plan, but actually it's a whole community that we need to nurture. Therefore, dealing with energy optimization, lots of people acquainted with the model of the green city of Benguerir. There is an energy research living labs, huge ones, no joke, I think, doing a national research on renewable energies, green energy, like the Green Energy Park and the Green and Smart Building Parks. You've heard of the Africa Solar Decathlon that I will present, and this is, of course, in collaboration with IRISEN, an institute of research on energy. And just to cut my story short, this is just examples of the infrastructure that is creating the town, creating the city. So the city is not like you go and you do a housing project and then you start looking for services for the people who live there, or vice versa. So it's a whole construction sites in a very integrated way of all the needs that city may have, but through research. So here you've heard about the Solar Decathlon of Africa, and it was a very good event that was organized by the university and, of course, IRISEN. And this is to test all kind of smart solutions in terms of energy or energy efficiency and resource optimization. I don't want to be long, so the only message I want to convey, be it Zenata or Benguerir or Mazagan or case of Al-Omrane, the new towns, Morocco has migrated from a generation of towns. They were there to solve the problem, only the problem of housing. We shifted from this generation of towns. Some of them, they succeeded partially. I would not say fully succeeded. Why? Because we never can deduce the population density from a big metropole or metropolis and create another small one to reduce the number just because of the housing demand. I think the whole future in Africa is how to launch a new generation, let's say new, because they are all the time new, but we need to embrace new approach, qualitative approach that is all about the well-being of people. And the people, they will not reach that well-being if they don't have all components of life. Because if you give me a smart villa 20 kilometers far from Casablanca, you're giving me nothing because it's very far away from my work. So what kind of human activities to create economic, financial wealth for people and right employment, and how to create residential neighborhoods to create the sense of belonging and the good quality neighborhoods. This is worldwide value, it's not only Morocco. And of course, how to create knowledge. Knowledge is very important. Most of the medieval towns, even in Morocco, as I've given the example of Fez, Fez reached in 16th century, the Medina of Fez reached the standard of the rules and ideals of the community of Fez. So the users, the residents, they are adopting a space or a territory to create a cultural set, cultural mindset. And this is what it means, the true citizenship, and we cannot just construct and consume concrete and create those boxes. They may be fancy, aesthetically highly valuable, but they are, from the human sense, void of any cultural, social, environmental value. Thank you very much for listening to all the speakers, including me. Now, I would proceed to ask some, I would prefer one question. We decided to have two questions, but I think one question for each speaker, and then we open the floor for the audience. So the first speaker, I will ask to see Moulin. I don't know if he's still with us. Si Said, are you still there?
Yes.
Good. So let me ask you, because we need, though we may have, or despite the fact we may have different initiatives in Morocco, but actually the good news, they are all having the same national strategy, because we have this royal initiative of human development, the new model for human development. And thanks to this new human development model that was initiated by all stakeholders in Morocco, gathered with intellectuals and all actors to define what the strategy for the near future and the midterm future, how Morocco would move to more equitable, inclusive human development, rather than be on the question of how to reduce poverty. So the first question to Si Said, how you as a national agency looking at energy efficiency, resource optimization, how you generalize your work on different sectors? Like, for instance, I know you're dealing with agriculture, you're dealing with housing, you're dealing with urbanization. So let's stick now to the topic of urbanization. So how you would be efficient in the coming 10 years to make the energy agenda included in different investments and projects. Please go ahead.
Thank you for discussions, Sir Radoine. It's a great pleasure for me. I was listening to my friend Mr. Hajj about all what happened in Zenata and how it was decided at the beginning, but how also the design of the project in the beginning started thinking sustainable development. It's very important. It's very rare to have projects in its conception, its design in the beginning, starting with sustainable development approach. Usually we add sustainable development in some projects. This was not the case here, and bravo for Zenata for that. But I would like to mention, to answer your question about, I know what was done in OCP also, but the agency now is in charge of the green economy. Green economy involved energy efficiency in industry, transport, buildings, agriculture, cities. It's also involved in sustainable mobility, and it's involved in clean production in the industry. In all those sectors, we are living in transition. And you know, we have now a new ministry. It's the Ministry of Energy Transition and Sustainable Development. And we are under the supervision of this ministry today. We are pushing on how to answer your question, how we manage to have all the impacts to the society for this transition. Public sector, private sector, government, citizens, everyone is concerned about this energy transition. And for that, you need, for each sector, for each approach, to have the right regulation and norms. You need to have those technical and financial support. You need to have sensibilization and capacity building for each sector. How we manage to do that is to share for each project. When you have all those points fulfilled, you can really manage to generalize. What happened for agriculture, for example, for solar pumping, we had to help farmers to switch from diesel pump to solar pump. For that, you need to sensibilize farmers. You need to train people who can size, install, maintain solar pumps in the rural areas. You need to have financing for that. So with Crédit Agricole, with Tamwil Fillah, we have dedicated laws for that. So that is for agriculture, but it's the same case for all sectors. When you manage to have all those points, and in the building sector, now we are looking how all the green financing. As I mentioned, we have a guide today dedicated to any green investment, even green buildings. And that's very new. We can also, at the same time, we're sensibilizing architects, we're sensibilizing actors in the building sectors. And you know how it's not easy to change behaviors in the building sector. It's not so easy, but the chances to have, we have with also with the CETEMCO and the Federation, la Fédération des matériaux de construction. This federation has today a guide also for all projects that are developed in Morocco with different actors and how they can use it in the building sector. So when you have all those approach and also regulation, we have this la réglementation thermique du bâtiment. It's something that is not easy to install, but was after many years, we had discussion with the Ministry of Habitat, and today this regulation is available. And it's very important that at the same time, when you are building anything, house, apartment, a new city, you need to have a minimum regulation for that. And that's what we have today in the kingdom. And it's something important because regulation is one thing, sensibilization is another thing, and financing is the last point that I mentioned. So to generalize any actions, we have big actors like OCP, like CDG, like Al-Omrane, where we had projects that we managed to even subsidize some investment in linked to energy efficiency in some areas for actors. But the main thing for generalizing is to have the three approach at the same time: regulation, sensibilization, and technical and financial support.
Thank you, Said. Thank you. Thank you by ending with this synthesis. Now, Si Shafiq Al-Omrane. It's quite intriguing with Al-Omrane that most of the projects, they were about social housing project. So we like it or not, at the start they were fragmented because you're acting at the territorial national level. You helped expand some cities, you helped with some compounds of social housing. So how you are moving now to implement a more sustainable settlements, not just compound of buildings, not just like housing project limited in terms of their area, but how you would establish a sustainable human establishments or sustainable cities in order that your action serve the sustainable development of the whole Morocco and why not Africa? Shafiq.
Merci, Radoine. En fait,
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question because we should look at things in their context. The program of new cities has started in the beginning of the 2000s, and the objective at that time was to provide housing for people who lived in unsanitary housing. So the first priority was to provide this housing and also to provide basic needs. First, provide housing, then provide the other utilities such as drinking water, also electricity, which was not available before. So the first thing was to focus on priorities. The second step was to think about the housing from the construction point of view. This is where we started developing and adapting sustainable standards such as thermic isolation of buildings, for example, which has several objectives and reasons at the same time. It aims to reduce the energy bill and for the country as a whole, and for sure contribute to a sustainable urban development. So gradually, the approach has become more systemic, and we have realized that social housing had to be more integrated and comprehensive. This is when we started including other aspects, which is the social aspect and the practical aspect. In terms of the social, in order to implement a social housing project, we should not separate this project from the territorial integrity or unit. This is when we had to think about other aspects, because it was not possible to have unaccessible social housing. That's why we needed several types of housing that are accessible, so we can ensure social inclusion for residents, but also for it to be practical, while providing all the needs that are necessary for the residents in terms of proximity and healthcare.
So now Al-Omrane is moving from the fragmented approach of social housing to generate a more sustainable human settlements by responding to the needs of the people, and of course assuring certain well-being for these people, regardless of how we just build, because we may shift from the key objectives of well-being, sustainability, resilience, etc., and to be just producers of housing. So I'm really happy today to hear that there are certain values that are respected to move on, especially that you are a governmental agency and you have the power to really produce quantity of housing. So if there are no principles of sustainability, we may risk plaguing all cities with the social housing, like not only the case of Morocco, by the way. In most developing countries now, we cannot talk about this city anymore. So let me move to Si Mohamed Amin Hajouj. Thank you for the presentation regarding the Eco-Cité of Zenata. I do remember that the site of Zenata had before some settlers, some people that were there living, etc., existing communities. How you are very inclusive in your actual planning of that new town, how you dealt with the existing population and how you are dealing with the future population, and how you are merging between the two and creating a true sense of inclusiveness.
Thank you, Hassan, for this question. La notion, encore une fois, d'inclusion.
The notion of inclusion is very much used when talking lately. And as I said, Zenata is an eco-city that lies in a balanced way, the three pillars of sustainable development that are recognized by the United Nations: the economy, the social, and the environment. Your question is focused on the social aspect of inclusion. and my colleague from Al-Omrane has spoken about social housing. But in my case, I would like to speak about the three pillars. First, the economic pillar, because you've seen in the presentation, starting with the benchmark and based on our experience, we noticed that the cities at first were a failure, and the industrial cities that do not take into consideration other aspects were also another flagrant failure, not only at the national level but at the international level. That's why the United Nations have thought about a ratio that it takes into consideration jobs and population. So one job for every three people. So this is when we started looking at the different opportunities in Morocco, and to try as much as possible to focus on what matters the most, because the project has to be accessible and close to a city that is already established. So Zenata is close to Casablanca. So in 2007 and 2008, the project was had 10,000 units and 148 industrial units, and there was also cottages at the maritime facade. So we thought in an inclusive way, so we can include everyone in this project. We can't hear the speaker. Apologies, we can't hear the speaker. And we have built in Zenata zones that are dedicated to this based on this efficiency model. And if you need further information, you can visit the SFH website so you can learn more about this policy. What we wanted to do is to integrate and include all of these people in neighborhoods with international standards, because Zenata, with 2 billion dirhams of investment, cannot be financed by the government alone. Or our stakeholders, shareholders. So that's why we decided to go for the 0412 equation that we have adopted, and we have an action plan for reinstallation that allows to find a solution in order to achieve a context of mixed social aspect and fiber optics and the sports space, education, schools. So we needed to include everything in a very well think way. Second was the economic inclusion. We have several projects at this level, 10,000 employees. So we have brought forward a zone of work on 80 hectares that is quite close to this area. And the whole structure of jobs was quite close to Zenata, and we have integrated all of this in Zenata, in addition to a UN program through the United Nations Sustainability UNIDO organization, so that we can achieve sustainable development to limit population pollution and also take into consideration this environmental aspect. We have also focused on water, as I said, and so we can be as inclusive as possible.
Enthusiasm, and this is good that the project is moving on very smooth. So, final message, through these case studies, and there are other case studies, we're showing that not only in Morocco, not here saying that we are the only ones. Other countries, other governments, they are looking for alternative solutions in terms of which kind of sustainable, resilient, smart cities we should build, we should plan, and we should upgrade. And hence, I think the case of these new towns and this transition towards sustainable cities in Morocco is no longer just a policy, but actually there are some concrete projects on the ground, and Morocco is leading the way the African continents. And I think Morocco is exploring its heritage and its really rich cultural background. Of course, understanding the current status of cities, that they are really in, some of them in crisis, because we should not show that everything works. But the most important thing, how we would prospect a new future for cities and non-cities in Morocco, also the rural territories, and how can we foster this new wave of working on more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient human establishment all over the country. And by the way, the good news that, as you've seen through this panel, different actors, stakeholders, they are working towards reaching this goal. But at the end of the day, I think the country, the people living in that country will really profit from these experiences, and of course, how to set the sustainability agenda in the urban sector mainly. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you soon